Hello guys, welcome back to Comic Book Cafe, and today we are reviewing E for Extinction issue number 1, obviously a Secret Wars tie-in book. So this is a hard book to talk about, because this book does not go into the typical X-Men book that you may have known in the past. So this book starts off very dramatic, where you see Xavier like in the danger room with the helmet on, saying, "Cassandra, get out of my head." He has 2 guns to his throat, and then the next panel you see that he's shot himself. You see blood and stuff, and that's next thing. You see the next thing, and you see these X-Men, at a party. Not X-Men you really know. These are not X-Men you know. Somebody's almost look like a generic X-Men. They don't look like X-Men you remember from most of the books or series or anything. And they're having a party, and then what later they call a human, when they come across them later, show up, and then they want to take their powers, and so they start trying to do this, and you see one of these X-Men going to raise a pipe, and all of a sudden the pipe lifts out of his hand, smacks into one of the human, and you see Magneto has shown up, and with his X-Men, and they take care of him. And then you're like, okay, this book is a lot of adjusting, because these are not the X-Men you know, or not even close. And so the next panel you see Cyclops show up with Emma, Ice Queen. Now, it may just be the art style, because I noticed the art style on the skeleton inside the glob stuff looked a little chubby. Cyclops looks a little bit like he's not in the greatest shape ever, in this book. But anyway, and they show up, and Magneto says, like always, you're late with times or whatever. I kind of take a jab at him, so you understand that clearly there's an issue between those two, and some has the Emma, and Cyclops shoots her with his beam, but he's having trouble drawing like power to shoot her, his optic blast, and so that all ends again, kind of setting up the situation that you find out that Magneto is in charge of the X-Men, now that Xavier's gone. And he's not exactly happy with the X-Men he has. He makes that quite clear. But there is a student called Mr. Quire, and he's like telling him, "I'm going to take you somewhere I've never shown you before." And he takes him in this room, and there's this big red-looking, like, cocoon or egg-looking thing. And he was like, when Xavier died, there was a psychic backlash that hit Jean Grey, and she went to a coma, which Jean Grey, Phoenix, is in this egg. And he's like, "I don't know what or who will hatch from this egg, but you're gonna help me hatch it." You see the new X-Men training with this Mr. Guire too. Before this, kind of hard on them. They all have a lot of issues. It doesn't go perfect. So you see that early. That okay, these are not like the invincible X-Men that you've seen in the past in other books. That they're not a cohesive team. This is not a cohesive team. They don't function, really well. And then we later see Cyclops and Emma, Ice Queen, who are a couple, sitting in their bed, like watching TV or whatever, and they're talking, and, Cyclops kind of talks about how he's kind of feels, like he likes Xavier down, but like Magneto, run the X-Men, but he also knows Magneto, got it fair and square. So you see how he's conflicted at loyalty to Xavier, but Magneto got it at the same time fair and square, according to his, his view of things. And then they kind of make a funny thing where he can use his visor to switch the channels on the TV, but he talks to her about his blast, how it's not nearly as good as it used to be. You could barely get it off, kind of thing. Guess old age kicking in. And then we see Magneto take another student to the same area where Phoenix is, a female, and he tells her, "I've never seen this room before. We need to hatch this egg. But we need a psychic father and a psychic mother." And that's where they leave you. Okay. So they need a guy and a girl to do this, and that's all you know. You have no clue what his plan is. You don't know what is in the egg. It's Jean Grey and she was the Phoenix, but who knows what's inside. And that part of the story is all done for this issue. We'll probably find more about that as the issues go on. But then we go back to see an old Wolverine sitting at a bar. These guys making fun of his hair and everything, and he gets mad, and he puts his claw through the bottle, but he cuts off a couple of his fingers at the same time. Not what Wolverine would normally do. They kind of freak out, of course, and Cyclops shows up as they're leaving, and he's like, he's telling him, don't do something or I'll burn your face, and Wolverine's like, you couldn't do it if you wanted to anymore. Like, he kind of senses that he's not nearly as powerful as he used to be, and then Cyclops jets back and goes, hey, well, you cut your fingers off, they're not healing, so clearly you're not healing as quickly as you used to either. So kind of showing they're both gotten older, they're not what they used to be. Again, this is a Secret Wars, any multiverse character thing. You don't know what universe these X-Men come from, because Secret Wars could be any Marvel universe, any alternate timeline. So we're just going with what we see in the book, but he agrees to go with him. So it's Cyclops, Emma the Ice Queen, and Wolverine, and they go up to this place, and you see the Human, because they call him the Human, and they take him inside, and you see a guy in there who's like, oh, hi friends, you come to take my place. And you see a guy with a metal mask on, like with blue glowing eyes. He's got a bunch of things in his head, metal in his head. His white head kind of looks like Xavier, and then you see a metal neck. And with all that determination, he's got his hands behind his back and everything. You wonder, is that Xavier that's still alive? Did he actually alive? And they've hit him here all the time, or is this supposed to be somebody else? Because you really don't know, because they only get one little blurb of dialogue, and you really look at it and go, that could be Xavier, because his neck and his head were kind of like really back, and you didn't really see any of it, so you thought it all got damaged, or is it another X-Men we don't know about? But that's how the book ends. It's an interesting book because it's not the typical book. It's, of course, the characters you know those characters. One other part I forgot to talk about was Beast, and to kind of hammer home the point of how different this timeline is than the other books, in the sense that people were afraid of Homo Superior. So there's this couple, and he meets them, and they're like, we want to have a Homo Superior mutant baby, because our neighbor next door has a mutant baby, and he can already do quantum physics at 7, and we want our kid to have a chance, against something like that. And so Beast goes, okay, we'll check for the gene, and of course he has a gene, and he was like, a day ago it was 1 in 20 males that I could find the Homo Superior gene. Today, every single male walked in the door has it. He's kind of wondering to himself. And by the way, later, Beast is at home, and someone knocks on the door for him, and he's really messed up, and he sees it's the human version of him. It's a human version of him, and they just leave that mystery hanging. So a lot of mysteries, a lot of things to figure out in this book. This is actually a book that you kind of have to know a little of the X-Men past to read, because you kind of have to know, like the implied, friction between Xavier and Magneto that existed in the books before, and other characters. It doesn't tell you what happened. It's also a book that you could jump into, forget about the past, just enjoy what they give you, and you could still enjoy it. But if you wanted to really get into everything going on, you would have to have read some of the X-Men books to know what's going on between them. And if you're with some person who just enjoys the book and can kind of, like I used to, when I first started reading comic books, I just would pick up and issue a book that looked cool, middle of a story arc, whatever, and just slowly piece things together as I went along. That you could do this with this book, because these are not where you have to know the whole history of these characters, but you have to know enough to know, well, Xavier and Magneto had issues because they were both on different sides of what they thought was right for mutants, and Cyclops obviously was more or less the general or the leader for Xavier's mutants, and he feels guilty because Magneto's got the team, and he feels guilty because he's loyal to Xavier, stuff like that. But overall, a rather interesting book, just going places you didn't think it would go, and not sure where it's going, because these are older X-Men, and you're not sure what happened. Why is Magneto in charge of the team? What is his plans? What are their plans? But again, because there's a lot of mystery, it's a very enjoyable too, because sometimes it's good to read a book where you don't know where it's going, rather than, oh, I know where these guys are headed in the book. But again, a really actually good book overall. It's just I couldn't get used to the generic X-Men, like an X-Men with one little eye that they called Cyclops, who makes a joke, I don't want to be named after that old geezer. So, anyway, what do you think of E, for evolution. Again, decent start to a book. It's kind of weird to get adjusted to some of these books. Some of the books have things you know, so you're like, you jump right in. Other ones are something completely different due to these Anyway, see you guys next time for next review, and talk to you guys later.